So, I think I've lost my marbles here. I I walked up to a bunch of deaf people in the library today, and what I really wanted to ask was if they knew of any deaf clubs around. So I find it's really good to immerse myself or surround myself with deaf people, or just like if I'm trying to learn some more German, surround myself with German people so that I'm forced to only communicate that way, and that will help me learn. And I I got flustered. I was embarrassed. I just walked up to people and went, "Hi." I said, I'm trying to learn sign language. I'm trying to do it slowly. I never even said my name or who I was or anything like that. That was so improper. I was so embarrassed. I thought about this stuff afterwards. But anyways, this is the Dear Louise book series. I'm Christina, Kristina, which is what I should have done when I was talking to those people earlier today. And please hit the like and subscribe. As of this recording, I lost 5 subscribers this week. I was doing so well. I still haven't hit 200, and I lost 5 subscribers. So I'm trying here. If you could really check out Flashback Mondays, I work really hard on those, and I touch upon a slew of Regency, contemporary, mystery, suspense, paranormal, urban, contemporary, inspirational. I hit a slew of different subjects. Also, Star Trek Fridays, and If Then. If you like this author, then maybe you like this. And I did one on forensics, and I have since found about 10 new authors that I could do a second forensics on. So I may do that at some point. But I've got a whole stack of others to do first. If you watch the homicide one, you'll see the spreadsheet where I was looking for homicide and I found 10 other subjects to find before I found the homicide ones. So anyways, to get onto it, this is book 4 in the Sarah Brandt Frank Malloy Gaslight series, Murder on Washington Square. And this is the Brian is Frank's son, boy, pretty sure it's boy, boy. The girls are down here, mother, father, boy, or brother, or sisters down here. Girls are down here. So I'm trying to learn sign language for the I don't know, for the book, I guess, for me to maybe I'm trying to do some substituting in the schools, so maybe I'll be useful in some of those classes, because I was a teacher and I can sign just a little bit, and I'm trying to relearn some signs, but I need to do some conversations. And that's I wanted to ask them and I didn't, and I should have, because this was an opportunity that was presented to me. And I feel like an idiot now because I just walked up to these people in the middle of public library. I was like, hi. I feel like an idiot. And then I had to show up. I'm like, I can do the alphabet with both hands. Big one. So I didn't even say my name or nothing. I feel like an idiot. So anyways, we are doing Murder on Washington Square, book 4. And Mrs. Sarah Brandt is a midwife. She's also the child of a very, 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 very wealthy couple, part of the New York 400, but she chooses to make her living as a midwife. She had a falling out with her folks, and they're trying to mend the fence. She had married a doctor, and she chose the doctor over them, but now the doctor died a few years ago, and that is going to be a huge thing in a future book. It hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen. It's going to be an issue. Also, so Sarah's trying to work with her parents, and I should have just a sec. Okay, oh, excuse me. So Felix and Elizabeth Decker are her parents, and Sarah is your midwife, is your main character. Her sister was an issue first couple books. Her husband was an issue a couple books, but they're deceased, and they're not the focus of the book anymore. But Frank Malloy is a detective with the New York City Police, and she has made his acquaintance in 3 books ago. So they are becoming friends. They are also a small hint of a relationship, very, very small. Just looks, just glances, touches, no major anything. Strictly platonic friendship. And then we have Mrs. Ellsworth, the next door neighbor, and I'm going to do a thing on her one day in a couple of months when we finish the books. And she has a son, Nelson. And Sarah will be gaining some other people in her household in future books. So it's so that's your basic core right now, those people. And Nelson, Mrs. Ellsworth's son, writes her a note and has a boy delivered to her that he wants her to meet him in the park. And she's like, why is he doing this? Why is he being so secretive? But she agrees to go meet him in the park. And he tells her that he was seeing this woman, Anna, and he was giving her money to help care for her sick mom. And then when the mom died, he was giving her money to pay rent. And then she convinced him, because he's a very naive young man and he wasn't too worldly. She drugged him. He passed out. And when he woke up, she told them they had been intimate. But he had no memory of them being intimate, but he believed her when she said they had, and that she was with child. And she thought that he was married and that she would blackmail him. Oh, I'll tell your wife if you don't pay me. And Nelson turned around and said that he wasn't married and he'd be very happy to marry her. And she just lost it. She just could not believe that he wasn't married and that she couldn't blackmail him. So he's a very, very naive young man, and he has fallen for this terribly. You can see it coming. The bells and whistles are going off in your head. Then we also check up on Brian. That is Frank's son. He's had the surgery on his club foot, so we're learning progress about that. We are also, in the future books, we will be getting information on his deafness, and he's going to go to, this is work. I forget what school is. School, I know this is, no, marriage, work. This is work. That's it, work. So we're going to be catching up with him and learning his progress. And Frank will be pursuing the schools that'll in later books, so that's to come too. So I like Mrs. Ellsworth. She's always got something to say, and we don't see too much of her in this book. And I like Sarah because of the storyline, because of what's going on in the story. Mrs. Ellsworth can't do her normal stuff on the porch. So we don't get too many of her sayings in this book, but we will in the future. And I'm going to do a thing on her. So she says, Mrs. Ellsworth shook her head. Sarah told her that Mrs. Malloy wouldn't approve of her son's acquaintance with Sarah. For some reason, the old woman thought Sarah had set her cap for Frank Malloy, and she disapproved even more than Mrs. Ellsworth approved of such a match. You must take something along with you for good luck, then, she said, searching in the pocket of her skirt for what she might have available in the way of a good luck charm. I won't need luck, Sarah scolded her. I'm just going for a visit. That woman might give you the evil eye or something, Mrs. Ellsworth warned. The old woman was a firm believer in things like the evil eye and good luck charms. You can't be too careful. Here, take this. She came down her porch and pressed a shiny new penny into Sarah's hand. Sarah couldn't help herself. This will protect me from the evil eye, she asked skeptically. Pennies are notoriously lucky, Mrs. Ellsworth assured her. I'd give you a rabbit's foot, but I don't seem to have one with me. The only other thing I have is nutmeg, she said, pulling it out of her pocket to prove. Nutmeg are always lucky, but and only protecting you from rheumatism and boils, which won't be much use with you with Mrs. Malloy. She's going to check on Brian. Now will it? But if you prefer a rabbit's foot, I'm sure I can find one in the house if you don't mind waiting. Oh no, don't go to the trouble. She doesn't need a rabbit's foot. But you know what they say, it didn't help the rabbit. So Sarah goes and visits Brian to check on him. She brings him a toy. She sees that the kid is very intelligent. He just can't hear. And none of them have learned sign language yet, so they can't communicate with him. And I think you should start. If a child is deaf, do the lip reading, but also do the sign language. Because I'm telling you that sign language is the universal language. Oh, she's always going off. Bing, bing, bing. Oh, only 3 bings today. Wow, we got off lucky. The other day she did all 12 for the first time in 20 years. So you can go, we are really spoiled here in this country. People that come here from other countries know English. If we go to other countries, we're not forced to learn German or Italian or any of those other languages because those people already speak English. They learn 2 languages. We only learn 1. We are spoiled because we're not forced to learn any other language but English because other countries learn English as it's a requirement that everybody learns English. But sign language, unless you're spelling a word, work in English in America is going to be work in Germany. It's going to be the same sign. The language will be, the spelling of the words will be different, but it's all the same language. It's universal around the world. Like and love and mother, father, mother, brother, sister. They're all universal signs. Eat, deaf, lip read. These are all signs that are used all over the country. There's one language around the world, and it's universal. So anyways, so then there's a newspaper. So then we have a murder. And we have the murder of the young lady that was trying to get money out of Nelson, Mrs. Ellsworth's son. And when this all comes to light, there's a reporter that is trying to get the real scoop on the story. They're camping outside of Mrs. Ellsworth's door, and Nelson is fired from his job at the bank. They can't. He's being questioned for murdering a lady, and they do all this questioning, and the newspapers hang out, and Sarah and Frank discuss the case. Frank goes to the boarding house where Anna was staying, and sometimes, dinner's repeating. Sometimes the murder, in some books, the murder is a constant in the book. Then there are some books where the murderer comes in and says, "Hi, I'm so-and-so," and then leaves. And this is one of those cases where the murderer is not seen very often, makes brief appearances. And there is very multi-layered, it's one plot, but it's layered. And there's a twist at the end that you do not see coming. It's hinted at slightly hinted a few times, very quickly, and if you're paying attention, you might not see it. So there's this little hinty out there about something else going on, but you're really not made aware of it until the end of the book. So they're talking about the case. Then Frank goes to the boarding house and he meets the landlord, and they discuss the case. Then Mr. Giddings shows up, and he's an attorney, and it turns out he was married, and he has this teenage 18-year-old, something like that, and he was being blackmailed too, and he was giving money to this woman too, and she had this thing going, and then it's learned that she was an actress, and she was depending on the kindness of men to support her living arrangements, and she was conning everybody. And we have one little Mrs. Ellsworth. It's not as humorous in this book as usual. Let's see. I knew something terrible was going to happen, Mrs. Ellsworth confided to Sarah as they cleaned up the kitchen after their meager supper. Remember I asked if you'd heard knocking the other night? Yes, Sarah said, not really certain. She didn't make an effort to remember all of Mrs. Ellsworth's superstitions. I heard it 3 nights in a row. That means someone is going to die. I knew it was going to happen, and I was so afraid it would be someone I knew, she said sadly as she took the dishes off the tray and she'd taken up to Nelson earlier. He hadn't come down, and he'd barely touched the food on the tray. Sarah hoped it was only grief for such an undeserving woman that had him so upset. Things you worry about never happen, Sarah said, quoting her mother. It's the things you never imagine that hurt you the worst. That's the truth, Mrs. Ellsworth said with a sigh, and looked up as if she might be able to see her son if she did. I just wish he could go to work, if he had something to take his mind off all of this. And they talk about all the reporters out front of the house. And Frank goes to the morgue, and the morgue guy tells him that Anna, the victim, was stabbed, and that where she was found was not where she was murdered. She was stabbed over here, and she walked over here. So she walked quite a bit after she was killed, and the medical examiner confirms that she was not with child, and she was also using one of the early prevention methods of a sponge way back when. So that's further proof that this woman Anna was conning people, taking these poor gentlemen for all their money. Then Sarah goes to see her folks. She wants her father to use his influence to get Nelson his job back, because she totally believes that Nelson is innocent. We all believe that Nelson is innocent. We know he didn't do this. He didn't kill that woman. And so Sarah's parents set up a dinner. That's how things are done in this particular society. You invite somebody to dinner if you want to discuss something with them. So that's how things are done. They go to Frank and Sarah go to the boarding house again to discuss things again with the tenants and the landlord. And we have another Mrs. Ellsworth. I don't think it's much. It's not her good stuff. What are you doing out in this weather? The old woman scolded Sarah when she opened her back door to admit her. And I can see you have an engagement. Is it with Mr. Malloy? She couldn't help smiling at the thought. No, I'm going to see my parents this evening. She decided not to mention the purpose of their visit so they wouldn't be disappointed if she wasn't successful in saving Nelson's job. I just wanted to let you know that Mr. Malloy is still working hard on the case. He asked me to remind Nelson not to leave the house and to tell you he'd be stopping by as soon as he spoke to one of the suspects tomorrow. Oh dear, I've had a tingling in my left eye all day. That's not a good sign, you know. The right eye means good fortune, but the left eye, well, I don't know how much more bad news I can bear. She looked as if she might weep, and Sarah wanted to offer at least some comfort. Unfortunately, she didn't have any. If Miss Ellsworth knew what Webster Prescott had written about Nelson lately, more than her eye would be twitching. Just stay out of the sight. You know Mr. Malloy will take care of everything. So Mr. Prescott is the reporter, and he has been stabbed. Sarah went to see him to have him print a fluff piece to say that Nelson is innocent, that he didn't do it, and he paints Anna as a harlot, that she was scheming all these men and blackmailing men for money for her support. And they find that Prescott, the newspaper guy, has been stabbed. Someone has attempted to kill him. So because he has the cop that finds him contact Frank, so Frank takes him to Bellevue, and then because of the hospital conditions, they do not have enough staff to attend all the patients. Ha! Where have I heard that before? Even modern hospitals do not have enough staff. You know, we need to train more medical staff. We need to build more hospitals. We need to build hospitals like we build 7-Elevens. Their populations are kabillions, and you have a hospital that can handle 1,000. It just doesn't work. When you're in a city of millions and millions of people, it just doesn't work. And we found that out during COVID too. But they need to build bigger hospitals or more hospitals like they build 7-Elevens, because there just aren't enough. So, but because of the conditions of Bellevue Hospital at this juncture, and because they don't have enough staff to pay attention to all the patients, and because they don't have all the machines that they have today back then, Sarah spends the evening with Prescott, keeping an eye on him to make sure that he gets the treatment he deserves, because she is a nurse. And then he talks to her a little bit, and she wants to know what was he doing prior to being stabbed. What had he stumbled upon? What information did he discover that the killer decided he needed to be killed? So he had spoken to an actress at the theater, and so Sarah goes to talk to the actress at the theater and get some juicy tidbits about the boarding house. Then she goes to dinner at her parents' house because, like I said, when you want to ask someone a favor in her social situation, you invite them to dinner. So they invite the bank president to the dinner, and he's trying to prove to his dad that he can be president of this bank. And they explain the situation to him, and he agrees to look into it. And then he comes back a few days later and tells Sarah that he cannot have Nelson come back because Nelson embezzled 10 grand. And Sarah knows that is absolutely false, that Nelson is too honest, and he wouldn't have a lick of sense on how to do it. And if he had done this, why, so because Nelson brings up a good point. When she first tells him this information, he's kind of frazzled and shocked and like, no, he didn't embezzle, and no, he didn't kill the girl. And then when he's talking to Frank Malloy the next day, he says, Mr. Malloy, there's no way that an audit could have been done on Monday and they could have discovered an audit of 10 grand missing in less than 24 hours. It would take them several weeks to go through all the records. So something fishy is going on there. So they confront Mr. Dennis with this also. And then Mrs. Ellsworth takes care of Mr. Prescott. But before they do that, and the reason she does that was because when Sarah and Mrs. Ellsworth get to Mr. Prescott's room, because they haven't had a chance to, they alerted his relative, but not in time. They get there and someone is trying to kill him. They're trying to OD him, so they interrupt the murder. So he goes out of it and they have to do extra guarding for the next 24 hours. So we have one more Mrs. Ellsworth. I love her little sayings, but this is one of the sadder ones. The hour was late by the time Sarah finally arrived at Bellevue. She found Mrs. Ellsworth dozing in her chair, her chin resting on her bony chest, her breathing coming in unladylike snores. Webster Prescott was sleeping too. He seemed to have recovered a bit from his earlier ordeal, and the nurse confirmed he'd been resting comfortably for several hours. Even his fever was a little lower. Mrs. Ellsworth awoke with a start and a snort when Sarah touched her shoulder. "What? Oh, Mrs. Branch," she said in relief. Then she instinctively looked at Prescott. "How is he?" "He seems to be doing fairly well." "Oh, heavens, don't say that. It's bad luck to say a sick person is doing well," she informed Sarah, aghast at her ignorance. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said, however, insincerely. "I mean, he's not doing as poorly as he was." She's such a treat, Mrs. Ellsworth. So you have the investigation into the murder of Anna, the lady that was blackmailing all these people. Then you have the investigation into Mr. Giddings, the second person that she was blackmailing. And Mr. Giddings, it turns out, was drunk in a bar the night that Anna was killed, and then he got arrested for a fight, so he spent the night in the Tombs. So when Frank goes to question the son, his mom believes that his son did it, so she confesses to protect him, even though Frank knows the son didn't do it. And Frank doesn't get a chance to tell the mother that he was not going to arrest the mother. And then the mother confesses, and she spends a couple of days in jail because she confessed, and he had to arrest her, and he had to put her in the Tombs. And he couldn't just, when things become clearer, and Sarah goes and talks to this woman and goes, "Hey, your son didn't do it, and Frank was not going to arrest him." And she's like, "Oh." And then Sarah's like, "Well, then did you do it?" And she's like, "No." She goes, "I was right. You confessed to protect him." And she said, yes, she confessed to protect her son because she thought her son did it. And because she couldn't give any accurate description of what had happened, what was stabbed, what knife was used, or where she was when she was stabbed. She couldn't give any valid information on any of that. So that thing is cleared up. But the real whodunit surprises you at the end. You don't see it coming. And Sarah is almost killed too. Someone tries to kill Sarah at the end. And there's an extra little tidbit at the end. Frank receives word about Tom's murder, Sarah's husband. And so Frank is going to look into it, and he's getting a word, and he's going to find out who did it in the next book or so. But I like the extra little tidbits at the back of her books, and some of them are really good. I enjoy the extra little tidbit that Victoria puts in her books. When I was doing research for this book, I came across an account of the trials of Maria Barbella, the Italian woman I mentioned in the story who had slashed her lover's throat because he refused to marry her. Her story was a classic case of justice denied because the defendant was a poor immigrant. Maria was fortunate to attract attention of a wealthy patroness who championed her cause and won her a new trial. The second time, she was found not guilty because she was temporarily insane. One of the first individuals to be acquitted on those grounds. As I read Maria's story, I was struck by how contemporary it sounded. Maria's case was first tried in the media of her era, the dozen of scandal sheets that passed for newspapers at the time. They judged her guilty and made a case against her before she ever came to trial. As reporters vied to make the story more sensational so they could sell more papers, the truth was mingled beyond recognition. Maria spent a long year on death row before she was granted a new trial. Maria became a media celebrity in particular because she was the killer. In most cases where a lover was killed, the victim was the woman and the man went on trial. In such cases, the woman's reputation was often destroyed in the press until the public came to believe she'd only gotten what she deserved. Today we call this putting the victim on trial, and the tactic continues to work, convincing juries to free even the most heinous of murderers. I continue to be amazed at how little has changed in the 100 years since Frank and Sarah walked the streets. These books are just awesome, and we will continue. We are going on to the next book in this series. I just love these books so much. Murder on Mulberry Bend, book 5. This is book 4, and I hope you will continue to enjoy these books with me as we get into the warmer months. I told everybody today that I was renaming spring. It's going to be the pollen season. So I hope you like this, and don't forget to check out Flashback Mondays, Star Trek Fridays, and If Then. I've got a couple of good If Thens coming up. Please hit the like and subscribe. Like I said, I'm down 5 subscribers this week. I could use a few. I would like to make 200 at some point, but I get 5-10 people to subscribe and 20 unsubs. I don't know what's wrong with me. If you could please hit the like and stay subscribed for a while, I'm most appreciative. Thank you.